Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. This time we're taking a look at Sobha Ltd's Q2 FY25 results. And
Oh, yeah?
you guys sent over a bunch of stuff for this one, their press release, of course,
Uh-huh.
some news about some new leadership changes,
Okay.
and a pretty hefty investor presentation.
That's good.
We're going to break it all down for you, give you the need-to-know info. And it's not all about the numbers this time. We're also talking about these leadership changes and some strategic moves that might give us a clue about where Sobha Ltd is headed.
Definitely an interesting time for Sobha Ltd. It seems like they're pushing for growth, but they also seem to be like shoring things up, really trying to build a solid foundation for the long term.
Okay, so for anyone who needs a quick refresher, Sobha Ltd is a major player in real estate and construction.
Yeah.
They're based out of Bangalore, got a pretty impressive 29-year history, and a reputation for quality projects.
And they've got that unique approach, that backward integrated business model.
Yeah, what is that exactly?
So it's the fancy way of saying they don't just build houses. They actually make a lot of their own building materials, too.
Interesting.
So we're talking concrete products, glazing, metalworks, even interior fittings, all in-house.
So they basically got their own built-in supply chain.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, it gives them incredible control over quality and costs, which is a huge advantage.
I can imagine. And we're not talking about a small operation either.
No, not at all.
They've completed over 139 million square feet of projects. Plus, they're branching out.
Oh, yeah.
Not just sticking to real estate. They're also in things like mattresses and interior design.
Diversification can be a really smart move, especially in a volatile market. It helps to mitigate risk and open up some new revenue streams, which is exactly what Sobha Ltd seems to be doing.
All right, let's dive into those Q2 numbers. The press release highlights a total revenue of Harsa's $9.65 billion.
Wow.
And real estate is the main event, of course, bringing in Arsa's $7.81 billion, about 80.9% of their total revenue. But don't forget their contracting and manufacturing business. They brought in a respectable Rs $1.74 billion.
And now for the really exciting part, the profit jump.
Okay, lay it on me.
Their profit after tax is up a whopping 73.3% compared to Q2 of last year.
Wow, okay.
So that's impressive in any market, but considering the current challenges in the real estate sector.
Yeah, a profit jump like that in this market definitely makes you wonder what they're doing right.
It seems like they're managing these challenges really well, with the rising interest rates, inflation, all the global economic uncertainty.
Yeah.
I mean, buyers are definitely hesitant right now. So for Sobha Ltd to pull off this kind of profit increase suggests that they're doing something that others aren't.
It definitely speaks to their operational efficiency.
Yeah.
And the smart decisions they're making. Now let's talk about another critical element for any business, but especially in real estate.
Okay.
Cash flow.
Cash flow is king in this industry. And Sobha Ltd seems to be doing pretty well. Their investor presentation shows a 4.1% increase in total collections for the first half of FY25.
So that's a pretty solid indicator of financial
Not
health.
really. Especially in real estate. Where projects can take years to complete, you need that steady cash flow to cover expenses and keep projects moving and deliver on time.
And Sobha Ltd has a pretty good track record of maintaining strong cash flow.
Yeah, they do.
And they've been smart about how they use that cash. Remember that Rs $19.99 billion rights issue a while back?
I do.
They've been using those funds to pay down debt and fuel future growth. In fact, they've managed to reduce their net debt by a massive Rs $9.82 billion.
It's huge.
Bold move.
It really shows that they're thinking long-term,
Yeah.
prioritizing that financial stability.
Oh, for those quick wins.
Yeah, reducing debt. It strengthens their balance sheet, lowers their interest expenses, which directly boosts profitability. So we've covered financials and cash flow. Now let's see how they're doing on the sales front, because that's ultimately what drives revenue.
Makes sense.
And wow, looks like they've got a real success story brewing here. Just in the first half of FY25, they sold 1,026 homes.
Wow.
Totaling 2,105,268 square feet and generating Rs $30.52 billion in sales value.
Those are impressive numbers for sure. But here's something that you should really pay attention to.
Okay, what's that?
Their average realization per square foot jumped by a remarkable 32.7%. compared to FY24.
Whoa, okay, that's a big jump.
It is. Suggests a shift toward those higher value projects.
So maybe they're going after a more premium market now.
It makes you wonder.
Yeah, are there any regions in particular that they're targeting.
Okay, let's break it down regionally. Carroll is a standout performer for Sobha Ltd. They've got record-breaking sales in this period. And Tamil Nadu is showing some really fantastic growth, too. 116.6% quarter-on-quarter increase.
Wow.
It seems like they're targeting regions with a lot of potential.
That makes sense. Tapping into new markets is a great way to increase that market share and diversify those revenue streams.
For sure.
Speaking of building, let's take a look at what they've actually delivered so far.
All right.
So they completed 1.79 million square feet of projects in the first half of FY25.
Which includes 11,127 homes. But here's where it gets even more interesting.
Okay, I'm listening.
They launched 5 new projects, totaling 3.5 million square feet. This is where we're going to see some significant growth in the coming quarters.
Makes sense.
And get this, they have a massive land bank, 435 acres ready for development.
Wow.
Talk about setting yourself up for sustained growth.
That's a lot of land. Talk about building for the future, literally.
It really does seem like it.
It does.
But it's not all about bricks and mortar.
Sure.
There have been some changes in leadership at Sobha Ltd.
That's right. They have appointed Mr. Nisanth M.N. as Deputy Managing Director, effective January 2025.
Oh, okay.
He's got expertise in project execution, business development, and overall strategy, so he could play a big role in this next phase of growth for Sobha Ltd.
And Mrs. Srivatsala K.N. has been reappointed as non-executive independent director.
Yep. She's got a deep understanding of finance and investment, which is obviously a valuable asset to have on the board.
Now, there was something that stood out to me, or rather, didn't stand out to me. In the investor presentation, they emphasized their strong financials and operational performance. But there's a surprising lack of detail about their sustainability and ESG initiatives.
That's a keen observation. It is worth noting, especially considering how important ESG is becoming.
Yeah, in the real estate sector.
Absolutely. ESG is not just a buzzword anymore.
It's not. Investors, customers, regulators, everyone's paying attention to this.
They are.
So what do you make of this omission? Should we be reading into this?
It's hard to say for sure. Maybe they're still developing their ESG strategy, or haven't quite established a clear reporting framework. But in today's world, transparency and a commitment to ESG are crucial.
You're right. Investors and stakeholders want to see action. They want measurable results, not just vague statements. So this lack of information could raise questions about their commitment to sustainable and responsible business practices.
It's definitely something to consider in a market where ESG is becoming a key differentiator. Companies that don't prioritize it risk falling behind.
Okay, so we've covered a lot here. Impressive financial, strategic moves, and this intriguing silence on the ESG front. What does all this mean for Sobha Ltd moving forward? We'll dive into that right after this.
All right, so before we jump into what all of this means for Sobha Ltd moving forward, let's recap a bit.
Okay, sounds good.
They've delivered some really impressive financial results. They're making some strategic moves. But then there's that curious silence around ESG.
Right. Those ESG updates or lack thereof are definitely something to keep in mind. But let's try to put all the pieces together. What does this all mean for Sobha Ltd?
Well, I think the overall picture suggests that they're financially healthy, they're actively growing, and making calculated moves to secure their future. They've got strong revenue streams, robust cash flow, and that huge land bank.
Right, like they're sitting on a gold mine.
Exactly. But what really stands out to me is their diversification strategy. They're not limiting themselves to just one region or just one type of real estate project. They're expanding geographically, entering new markets like Tamil Nadu, and really strengthening their position in existing markets like Kerala.
And they're not just building those luxury villas anymore, right?
Right. They're offering a variety of products to appeal to different segments of the market. So we're talking affordable apartments, high-end commercial spaces, a little something for everyone.
So they're casting a wider net, reaching a broader customer base, not putting all their eggs in one basket.
You got it. And that diversification is a real strength, especially in a market like this. It helps them spread the risk, navigate the economic uncertainties.
Well, it's like having a safety net, or maybe several safety nets.
Sure.
But let's get back to that question mark. Hanging over their ESG performance, I mean the lack of detailed updates, in their investor presentation, it does raise some concerns.
It does, in this day and age. Sustainability and responsible business practices are non-negotiable.
Yeah, investors are demanding more transparency and accountability when it comes to ESG.
They are. And companies need to be prepared to address that.
And it's not just investors. Customers are becoming more conscious of these issues as well. They want to support businesses that share their values, and that includes environmental and social responsibility.
Absolutely. Plus, you got to consider the regulatory landscape. Governments around the world are implementing stricter ESG regulations, so companies that ignore this shift are putting themselves at risk.
So could this lack of transparency on ESG be a potential weakness for Sobha Ltd?
It's certainly something to keep an eye on. It might not be a deal breaker, but it's definitely a factor that investors and stakeholders will be watching.
Okay, so for potential investors out there listening, what should they take away from all of this?
Well, first and foremost, Sobha Ltd is a fundamentally strong company with a history of navigating these market cycles and delivering those solid results. Their diversification strategy is a huge plus. It helps to mitigate those risks and creates new avenues for growth.
But don't dismiss that ESG factor.
Right. Investors should really be looking for more clarity from Sobha Ltd on their ESG commitments and initiatives.
So what are their specific goals? How are they measuring their progress? What concrete actions are they taking to integrate sustainability into their operations?
Those are all important questions. And this isn't just about checking boxes. It's about demonstrating a real commitment to creating long-term value.
Yeah, it's about doing good while doing well.
Exactly. Companies that embrace ESG principles are generally better equipped to manage risk, attract talent, and build a truly sustainable future.
So Sobha Ltd has a lot going for it, but to really reach their full potential, they need to step up their ESG game and be more transparent about their efforts.
I agree.
Okay, so we've unpacked their financials, explored their strategic moves to diversify, and addressed the elephant in the room, their lack of detail around ESG.
Yeah.
But there's one final thought, a bit of a cliffhanger, if you will,
Ooh, I like cliffhangers.
that I want to leave you with before we wrap things up. Sobha Ltd has been quietly expanding their footprint across multiple regions and diversifying into new business segments. Could this be their secret weapon for navigating all the future market uncertainties? And what does it mean for potential investors like you? Well, we'll explore those questions after a short break. All right, so we're back. And before the break, we were talking about this diversification strategy at Sobha Ltd, expanding into new regions, venturing into different business areas. Could this be the key to navigating, a pretty unpredictable future?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? I mean, in a world where things are changing so rapidly, diversification can be a really powerful tool for building resilience.
It's like that old saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Sobha Ltd seems to have taken that to heart. They're not relying on just one region or one type of real estate project for their success.
Exactly. They're spreading their risk across different markets and different sectors.
Yeah.
Take their regional expansion, for example. They've got a strong foothold in Bangalore, but they're making significant moves into other high-growth areas like Kerala and Tamil Nadu. Each of those markets has its own unique dynamics, its own customer base, even its own risk profile.
So if one market kind of slows down, they've got these others to balance things out.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot like diversifying an investment portfolio, but instead of stocks, it's real estate projects. And then you've got their product diversification too. It's not just luxury villas anymore. They're offering a range of products to appeal to different segments of the market, from those affordable apartments to those high-end commercial spaces.
So they're casting a wider net, reaching a broader customer base, not putting all their eggs in one basket.
Right. And don't forget about their ventures into other related businesses, like those mattresses and interior design. They might seem like small additions, but they contribute to that overall diversification strategy, creating multiple revenue streams, reducing their dependence on real estate alone.
It sounds like they're really strategically positioning themselves to weather any storm. But what does all this mean for potential investors?
While investing in a diversified company like Sobha Ltd can potentially reduce your overall risk. If one part of their business faces challenges, the other parts can help to soften the impact. It's a way to spread your bets and reduce your exposure to any single market or product.
So it's like having that built-in safety net that we were talking about earlier. But diversification alone isn't a guarantee of success, is it?
No, it's not a magic bullet. Investors still need to look at the bigger picture. Sobha Ltd's overall performance, their management team, their financials, and yes, their commitment to ESG.
So do your due diligence, understand the company's strategy, and then make an informed decision.
Exactly. Diversification is a tool, but it's not a guarantee.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into Sobha Ltd. We've analyzed those impressive financials, their strategic moves to diversify, and that question mark over their ESG transparency.
It's been a fascinating look at a company that seems to be in a strong position for the future.
They've got a solid track record, they're adapting to these changing market dynamics, and they're thinking long term. But as we always say, knowledge is power. Don't just take our word for it. Dig deeper. Look into their reports, their projects, their leadership, and especially those ESG initiatives. Ask those tough questions, and then make your own informed decisions.
Absolutely. Stay informed, stay engaged, and keep asking those questions.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And that concludes our deep dive for today. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time for another insightful exploration into the world of business. Until then, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.